Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Rob here. Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of the Flame Entertainment and Sports in 2026. Hope everyone had a great end to 2025 and hope the new year's been off to a great start for you all out there. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Please make sure to keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching right now, whether it be on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. We'd greatly appreciate it. So on this first episode of 2026 for the podcast, we're going to be solely, covering the NFL. A lot has gone down. I'm going to start this episode off by going over my playoff predictions prior to the season beginning, followed by the actual result of the teams who actually made it into the playoffs. Then after that, I'll be getting into my predictions for the upcoming playoffs, which begin this weekend. And don't worry, for all you entertainment fans, by the way, we will release some sort of entertainment episode this weekend. But I'm a big fan of the show, The Traders, the reality TV show. I haven't really covered it on here on the podcast, but the new season, right, season 4, is coming out on Thursday night. So I'm planning on covering each episode for the first time on the podcast. So stay tuned this weekend. There will be an entertainment episode where I talk about the first 3 episodes of season 4 of Traders. And then lastly, today on our final topic within this NFL episode, we're going to be getting into some coaching news, starting off with John Harbaugh, longtime Ravens Super Bowl winning coach. He was fired from Baltimore, and now there's a lot of teams in the NFL, contacting him and his people. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. With all that said, let's start off by reviewing the NFL season and then getting into our predictions for the upcoming playoffs. All right, guys, so let's start off as I recap my predictions for the playoffs going into this NFL season, followed by the actual result of the teams that made it into the 2025-26 NFL playoffs. So I'm going to start off with each division. Originally in my prediction video, slash NFL season preview episode that we did, I started off with the AFC East, so I'm going to be going in that same order. So in the AFC East, I had Buffalo, New England, and Miami making it into the playoffs. I got 2 out of the 3 right, as New England and Buffalo made it into the playoffs. Then in the AFC North, I had Baltimore as the only team from that division going in. It came down, the last regular season game of the season was on Sunday Night Football, where we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers defeat the Baltimore Ravens and therefore knock out the Ravens. So I got that one wrong, as the Steelers were the only AFC North team to make it into the postseason. Followed by that division, we had the AFC South, where I had the Houston Texans making it in. And although Houston didn't make it, so I had that right, they made it as a wild card. And actually, Jacksonville, where rookie head coach Liam Cohen won the division and made it in out of the AFC South. Then we have the final division in the AFC. Shocker, to me, the most shocking storyline of the whole season. I had Kansas City and Denver making it into the playoffs. I got one of those teams right. And no, it wasn't Kansas City, it was Denver. And there was a second team that made it in that division as well. Not Kansas City, though. It was the Chargers. So I want to talk about that really quickly because, like I said, that's the most shocking headline of the whole season for me, is Kansas City not making it into the playoffs. It was a very weird year for Kansas City in general. Obviously, they've been so dominant with the dynasty they've had, led by Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and the list goes on. Unfortunately, I feel like Kansas City, they kind of came up short this year specifically because I feel like they didn't focus enough on the offensive line in the offseason. I know they drafted Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, and I thought that was a good pick at the time, but I felt like they needed to do a lot more than just bringing in a rookie. I don't know. I felt like they needed to go and get some veterans at least, and I understand, they didn't have a lot of money to work with, so it's not like, they could just spend on every elite O-lineman in the world. But when you really look back at the 2 Super Bowls, including last year's against Philadelphia, that Kansas City has lost, it's really been because of the lack of play by the offensive line. Both of the Super Bowls, one being against Tampa, and like I said, the most recent one being against Philly. Kansas City lost both of those Super Bowls because Patrick Mahomes is literally on the run the whole time. And then when you don't have an offensive line, it's also hard to build and initiate a running game. And I feel like this whole season, Kansas City's running game never got working. And credit to Andy Reid because he kept trying and trying. But ultimately, that running game never got working. But at the end of the day, the anchor of all running games, passing games, and all elite offenses is that offensive line. It doesn't matter. Like, they literally have the best quarterback in the league, arguably the greatest of all time back there. And they didn't even make the playoffs. And then, unfortunately, their season got even more gut-wrenching when Mahomes went down with a torn ACL. So that was unfortunate to see as well. And obviously, we're sending all our best to Patrick Mahomes at this time. And we know Kansas City, they're going to bounce back. I'm really intrigued to see what they do this offseason. I feel like Brett Leach and the front office here, they really need to, step up to the plate, because I feel like the last couple of years they kind of lacked in terms of bringing in, like I said, specifically offensive line. But even you look at the rest of the team, like following offensive line, they got to focus on bringing in at least one or two more receivers, maybe a new running back. We all love Isaiah Pacheco, but at the end of the day, he's already had multiple knee injuries. He's only getting older. And, I don't think he's built to be that every down consistent back anymore. And I think it'll be great if they're able to bring in someone who could kind of take off the workload for Pacheco and kind of save him more for the postseason, being that he's older now, and you bring in a young, speedier guy with more energy, more stamina. I think that could really work wonders for that team. So, yeah, I know I focus solely there on Kansas City in comparison to any other, division or team I've mentioned. But like I said, that was the most shocking headline of the season for me, that Kansas City didn't make it in. Now to move on to the AFC seeding, like I had each team making it in, followed by the actual seeding for this year's playoffs. Starting off from 1 to 7, I had Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo, Houston, New England, Denver, and Miami, followed by the actual results, where we have Denver as number 1, followed by New England, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, Houston, Buffalo, and the LA Chargers. Now let's get into the NFC, starting off with my predictions in the NFC East. I had Philadelphia, the defending champs, is the only team making it in from that division, and I was right with that one. And then in the NFC North, we had 3 teams making it in. We had Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit. I got one of the 3 right. I had Green Bay, and they made it in. But the actual division winner, led by rookie head coach Ben Johnson, second-year quarterback Caleb Williams, the Chicago Bears, one of the most impressive seasons so far this season. I didn't mention it, but along with the Bears, of course, we have Jacksonville and Denver as well. 3 teams there that have really been super impressive and have made some massive jumps from one year to another. Then in the NFC South, we had Tampa winning that division. Unfortunately, Tampa, they started off hot. I believe it was like 5-2, I want to say. And they ended up losing, I think, 7 of the last 9 games or 8 of the last 9 games, something like that. Unfortunately, they didn't make it in. So the lone team from that division was the Carolina Panthers. That's another great story. So congrats to the Carolina Panthers on making it in with second-year head coach David Canales, and of course, Bryce Young, who they picked number 1 overall a couple years ago out of Alabama. Then in the NFC West, the final division here in the NFC, we had the San Francisco 49ers and the LA Rams making it in. I got those two teams right. They made it in. But our additional team that made it in and that actually won the division was the Seattle Seahawks. Another amazing story with second-year coach Mike McDaniel, newcomer at quarterback Sam Darnold, who led Minnesota to the playoffs last year. Now he leads Seattle, and they have arguably the best defense in the league. Their pass rush reminds me so much of the Philadelphia Eagles from last year, and I think the Super Bowl is the perfect example where Vic Fangio and that unit, they had like 7 or 8 pass rushers. It felt like whoever they threw out there was able to get a pass rush against Mahomes and that offensive line of Kansas City. And I feel like Seattle modeled their team that way going into this season. They did a tremendous job. Shout out to John Schneider, the longtime GM there, one of the rare elite general managers in all of football. And then also they focus on their offensive line, and they tremendously improved that area of their team that had been something within the last 3 to 4 years that they had greatly lacked. The offensive line had been really pushing them back. And, from one year to another in the offseason, they fixed that, and it's worked wonders for the Seattle Seahawks overall. And then now to go over how I had the NFC seeding going into the season, followed by the actual result of the seeding for this year's postseason. Starting at number 1, I had the defending champion Philadelphia Eagles, followed by Tampa, Green Bay, San Francisco, Minnesota, the LA Rams, and the Detroit Lions. And the actual results are, at number 1, we have the Seattle Seahawks, followed by the Chicago Bears, Philadelphia Eagles, Carolina Panthers, LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers, and Green Bay Packers. Now to get into my actual predictions now, for the actual 2026 NFL playoffs, we're going to be starting off in the AFC, and we're going to be starting off with the matchup that comes first, followed by the matchup that, comes last in the given conference. So for the AFC wildcard matchup beginning this weekend on Saturday, we have the number 6 seeded Buffalo Bills heading into Jacksonville and defeating the 3-seeded Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville, I mentioned them a little while ago, is a great story this year. One of the best stories in the league, one of the most surprising stories, I would say, with a rookie head coach, a rookie general manager. Jacksonville has done a tremendous job this year, but I just feel that I'm going to take the experience that Buffalo has over the inexperienced Jaguars team. I just feel Buffalo, many people are counting them out. And don't get me wrong, I'm not very high on Buffalo right now. I don't think they're the same team that they've been in the past, and they're definitely not the same team that I thought they would be going into the season. A big part of that is because I feel like, yes, they've had a lot of injuries, but I feel like Brandon Beane, the general manager, although he's had a great run in Buffalo, I feel like the last two off seasons specifically, he hasn't focused enough on improving the defense. And I get it. People are like, no, but it's not that. It's that they have injuries. And I get it. But at the end of the day, you should be prepared for injuries. It's the NFL. There's always going to be injuries. You got to be ready to have a lot of depth if you really want to compete for a championship. I feel like Buffalo hasn't done a good enough job of that. But with that said, I am going to take the experience over the experienced Buffalo Bills with a road playoff win in Jacksonville against the inexperienced Jacksonville Jaguars. Followed by that matchup, the next one in the wild card in the AFC, we have the 7-seeded LA Chargers losing to 2-seeded New England Patriots. Of course, New England, another great story this year. I would say I was one of the rare people out there who was very high on New England coming into this season, specifically because of Mike Vrabel. I feel he's one of the rare elite coaches in the league. And I'm so happy that I feel like for the first time in his career, this is what his 8th season as a head coach, I want to say. This is really the first time, at least in my opinion, that I see him getting his flowers. You know, he spent 7 years in Tennessee. He never got full credit, in my opinion. What he did there was unbelievable. Multiple playoff wins, AFC championship game appearance, knocking Tom Brady out of what would be his final game as a New England Patriot. There's just so many things he did. Now he goes into New England, what I would call the most talented team that Vrabel's had so far in his career. But they're also one of the youngest teams in the league, mixed with a couple of veterans. You know, Vrabel got in there, and they really focus on the offensive line. You know, they draft Will Campbell with their first-round pick, the left tackle out of LSU. Fortunately, he's missed, half of the season. But to start off the year, he was amazing. Then at right tackle, they picked up almost 40-year-old Morgan Moses, who's had just an incredible career with Washington, with Baltimore, with the Jets, and now with the New England Patriots. So I really focus on offensive line. And then you look defensively, and they've really focused on improving that whole defensive unit. You know, in the middle already, they had Christian Barmore, but then you can't just have one guy. So Christian Barmore is still doing a hell of a job, but they also added other pieces around him. And one of the most underrated signings of the whole offseason ended up being by New England, and that was signing Caleb Chason, the former first-round pick out of LSU by the Jaguars. He spent some time last year with the Las Vegas Raiders, but this year really with the New England Patriots has been Chason's breakout party. And I feel like throughout this whole playoff run, Caleb Chason will be an X factor for how far the New England Patriots go. And then their linebacking core as well, they've really improved. You know, corner-wise, Christian Gonzalez, I mean, his first couple years in the league out of Oregon, that guy's been absolutely elite. He missed a couple games this year, but thankfully he is healthy right now for this postseason run. I just feel like Christian Gonzalez, once he puts it all together, even by next year, he could be the #1 corner in the league alongside Patrick Surtain of the Denver Broncos. I really love Christian Gonzalez. And then just overall, Mike Vrabel's coaching is just unbelievable. It doesn't take any BS. One more guy I want to shout out that I haven't been a huge fan of throughout his career is Stefon Diggs. Don't get me wrong. I've always given Diggs the credit for the talent. You know, he had a tremendous run in Minnesota, followed by a tremendous run on the field as well in Buffalo. But he has been a guy who has caused some drama in locker rooms in the past, and that's something I'm very much turned off by. But this is the first time I really feel that I see Stefon Diggs taking winning seriously. And you know what it is? It's Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, he doesn't care who you are, how much you're making, what you've done in your career. He's never going to take BS from anyone, and he just wants to win. I feel like this is the first time I actually see Stefon Diggs committed to the team and to trying to win. So shout out to him on a tremendous job as a veteran leader for a young team, especially a young receiving core there in New England. Next up, our final wildcard matchup in the AFC. We have the 5th-seeded Houston Texans heading in to Pittsburgh to face the 4th-seeded Pittsburgh Steelers. And we actually have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning this game. I know many people would consider that an upset. And I understand, Houston, they have arguably the best defense in the league, arguably the best pass rush, the best secondary in the league. But I'm just not a big believer in Houston's overall offense. I feel that's been the one downfall in the DeMeco Ryans era. I think DeMeco Ryans is one of the best head coaches in the league. Obviously, he's a defensive-minded guy, and like I said, they have arguably the best overall defensive unit. Like I said already, pass rush, secondary, all that stuff. But something I see is like a lack of coaching, specifically on offense. You know, they had Bobby Slowick last year. They fired him. This year, they moved on to a new offensive coordinator. And when I see that, at least as a Dolphins fan, it takes me back to the Brian Flores era where it would seem like our defense was always fine. being that it was Flores' specialty. But I felt like the offense, every year we literally had new offensive coordinators, and literally in Flores' third and final year, we had like 2 or 3 co-offensive coordinators. So that's something that I really see as the main issue there in Houston. And until they don't fix that, I'm not going to be a big believer in this team making a real run in the playoffs. So that's why I have, the better coach, Pittsburgh Steelers, with Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers too. I just feel that the 2 veterans there in Pittsburgh are going to figure it out. And then I got to shout out some of the older guys on defense there with Cam Hayward and TJ Watt. They finished the season on a tremendous note. And I just feel those 4 leaders right there, Watt, Hayward, Tomlin, and Rodgers, are going to help, Pittsburgh, quote unquote, shock the world against the Houston Texans. Even though to me, this is a much more, close matchup than what people are talking about. I feel like a lot of people have talked about Houston, not only now, but throughout the season. Like there's some sort of like Super Bowl type of team, and I just don't see it, like I said, until I see them figure out, how to run together a well-put offense and develop a nice running game and stuff like that. All right, now to get into our NFC wildcard matchup predictions. So first off, we have the 5-seeded LA Rams heading into Carolina to take on the 4-seeded Carolina Panthers. In that matchup, I have the LA Rams easily winning. Now, not easily in a disrespectful way. I just feel like the Rams are built for a Super Bowl, while Carolina, I don't think anyone expected them to even be in the playoffs this year. So I feel like Carolina, they're a lot of years down the line in terms of actually competing in the playoffs, and the Rams are perfectly set up for a Super Bowl run this year. Followed by that matchup, we have a friggin' arguably the best rivalry in all of football, the NFC North Classic rivalry, over 100 years old. We have the Green Bay Packers heading into Soldier Field to face off against the 2-seeded Chicago Bears, and we have Ben Johnson, rookie head coach, leading the Bears to a win against their longtime rival, the Green Bay Packers. This is an interesting matchup for me. Chicago, they've been a great story this year. They have a tremendous defensive unit. They have a lot of veterans out there led by Kevin Byard. I love watching him ever since his days in Tennessee. I believe he's around 32 or 33. I think he led the league in interceptions. So shout out to him. He's obviously made a huge difference there, and he's provided great leadership for that Chicago defensive unit. Then offensively, they've taken a huge jump this year. And obviously Caleb Williams, he's done a lot better this year. The receiving core has gotten better as the season's gone on. But really, to me, the change that Ben Johnson has done there is emphasizing offensive line, and that has led to opening up the run game. They brought in multiple offensive linemen after hiring Ben Johnson, including Joe Thuney, the multi-time Super Bowl champ with the Patriots and Chiefs. He's worked wonders for that Bears offense and offensive line overall. And then when you look at their running game now, they have the 2-headed monster of DeAndre Swift and rookie Kyle Monangai. I don't know if I pronounced Kyle's last name right there, but that's been the main change, in my opinion, that Ben Johnson, just like what I said with Mike Vrabel focused on the offensive line. Ben Johnson's done the same thing here. He's brought that same philosophy he learned from Dan Campbell in Detroit to Chicago, and now you see the difference in caliber. The caliber of team that Chicago went from last year to this year is just unbelievable to see. But like I said, I have Chicago beating Green Bay there in that rivalry. And then our final NFC wildcard matchup, we have the 6-seeded San Francisco 49ers led by Kyle Shanahan, Rob Saleh, John Lynch, and the whole crew there heading into Philly and knocking out the defending champion 3-seeded Philadelphia Eagles. And that one, I just feel like overall right now, I trust, not just right now, but overall, it's hard for me to ever go against Kyle Shanahan. I think he's one of the rare elite coaches in the league. I think he's one of the rare coaches that regardless of who's playing for him on the field, you're always going to have a chance to win any given game with that coach. And now to go into our divisional round predictions, heading back to the AFC, we have the 6-seeded Buffalo Bills heading to Denver to take on the 1-seeded Denver Broncos. And we have the Bills once again picking up their second consecutive road playoff win. And like I said earlier, if you guys heard me, I'm not huge on Buffalo, but just like I said with the first matchup, I just take experience over inexperience. I think Buffalo's experience here gives me a little more confidence in the inexperienced Denver Broncos. And although the Broncos have been a tremendous story, 1 seed with second-year quarterback Bo Nix with Sean Payton there and everyone, they've done a tremendous job. Vance Joseph leading the defense, they're doing amazing. I just feel that Denver, they wait too long to put it all together, and you can't do that in the playoffs, especially against an experienced opponent like the Buffalo Bills. Then our second and final divisional round matchup here in the AFC, we have the 4-seeded Steelers heading into New England, but we have the 2-seeded Patriots defeating Pittsburgh. I just feel that New England right now, they're built for a run with Mike Vrabel, Drake May, and the rest of the gang. While Pittsburgh, I think they're gonna eke out that win against Houston, but I think by the time they face this young and hungry Patriots team, I think they're gonna kind of run out of gas. I feel like that game, and maybe at halftime we'll see like a 3-point game, but then by the midway through the third, I feel like New England will kind of take off and take at least a double-digit lead and kind of never look back. And that might end up being Aaron Rodgers' final game of his career. We shall wait and see on that one. Then for our divisional round predictions in the NFC, we have an upset here. We have the 6th-seeded 49ers heading into their division rival Seattle Seahawks and taking down the number 1 seed out of the NFC. I just feel in this matchup, although Seattle's been a great story, and like I said, their pass rush reminds me exactly of Philly's pass rush from last season. I just feel the experience and the overall coaching of San Fran, I ride with them more than I do with the young and inexperienced Seattle Seahawks. Then we have the LA Rams heading into Chicago and defeating the 2-seeded Chicago Bears. So now to get into our championship game predictions, we have literally the same exact matchups that I had in my original NFL season preview predictions. We have Buffalo against New England, but the difference this time, I had New England heading into Buffalo, but this time we have Buffalo heading into Foxborough, the face-off against their division rival, the 2-seeded Patriots. This time, instead of Buffalo, I have the New England Patriots, making it into the Super Bowl in Mike Vrabel's first year there as their head coach. And the NFC Championship game, we also have a difference because originally I had the Rams heading into San Fran and San Fran defeating the Rams. This time we have San Fran heading in to face the 5th-seeded Rams, and we have the Rams winning it this time. And then for our Super Bowl, we have the LA Rams heading into San Francisco and taking down the New England Patriots, and we have Matthew Stafford winning Super Bowl MVP. He's still getting the job done all these years into his career. So there you have it. The ultimate prediction, you got it right there. You have the LA Rams becoming the 2026 Super Bowl champions. But yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this segment of our episode. And now let's head into some coaching news as we start off with the shocker around the whole NFL, in which the Baltimore Ravens fired Super Bowl champion John Harbaugh. All right, guys, so for the second part of our first episode of 2026, where we're covering all things NFL, we have our boy Jerry. So Jerry, welcome back to the podcast, man. Happy New Year.
Thank you, bro. Happy New Year to you too, man.
Nah, for sure, man. Thanks for joining us today. And yeah, guys, now we're gonna get into some coaching news. A lot of coaching news going on around the NFL. But we're gonna start off with the headliner. John Harbaugh, after 18 seasons with Baltimore, the Super Bowl champion head coach 12 times in the playoffs, he has been fired from Baltimore. So first off, Jerry, your initial reaction, to when you heard the news of Harbaugh being fired.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I thought they would probably just run it back and just keep going with him. But when I saw it, I wasn't super shocked because I thought, oh, okay, they might just want to go in a different direction. But honestly, that wasn't really something I was expecting to happen either, because he has done so well for the organization, and he has helped them bring them to the top, because they were a good organization before he got there, but they weren't constantly contending for Super Bowls when he got there. And he's done well with the development of quarterbacks. When you think from the beginning, they got Joe Flacco, they developed into a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He was never elite, but he was a really good quarterback. He was a quarterback that you can trust. And then Lamar Jackson, he became one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. So after 18 years and all of those and those 2 tenures, or those 2 different eras of John Harbaugh football, he's gone. I think from what I've heard, it looks like things weren't going well between him and the front office, and him and Lamar. So I think this was probably the best move for both sides, to give Harbaugh a new chapter in his coaching career. The Ravens should move on as well. I think this isn't. I don't think it's the biggest deal, the biggest negative for either one. I think this might just be what they both needed. But I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't something I was expecting the Ravens to do. I thought they might just let him ride it out until he retires. But they decided to go in a different direction, and hey, good for them. But there is going to be a lot of teams that are going to want his services. I think there's like already 9 teams that have called
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah, at least that's what's been like allegedly reported, like 9 teams so far. But yeah, not to kind of like react to what you said there. I agree that like overall, there were like rumblings throughout the season, possible like rifts and stuff going on in the locker room and like you said, the front office. But ultimately, I was still surprised because I didn't expect like organization like that to give up really on the guy who's led these 18 years. I don't know, like I don't personally, I don't agree with the move, but I do. But then like hearing you talk, I understand where you're coming from. That you feel like it was just best for both sides to part ways. So from that perspective, I understand it. But I just feel like, man, it's so rare to get a coach of this caliber, to have him in your building for so long. Everything he's built, like you said, the 2 different like eras, led by Flacco and Lamar Jackson, who are like polar opposite, right, quarterbacks. And Harbaugh never complained. Something you texted me yesterday that I agree with is Harbaugh's shown the ability to adapt to the modern NFL. And I think that's something I always look for in any type of coach in any sport. And I think Harbaugh's a perfect example. And you just said it there with Flacco, the ultimate like pocket passer, classic prototype type of football quarterback. And then Lamar Jackson, who is a runner first type of thing. You kind of gotta change your offense to like a college RPO type of system. And the fact that Harbaugh, he never complained. He completely collaborated, in my opinion, with the front office. They still had Joe Flacco. They went and drafted Lamar Jackson. Did we see Harbaugh complain? Did we see him whine? Did we see him request to be like let go? He always stayed the course in terms of what the organization wanted to do. But at the end of the day, I think for him at least, like, I think this is he's gonna be a lot better off. Because, at least for me, in the Lamar Jackson era, there's nothing like personal about whenever I talk about Lamar Jackson. I'm always a big fan of him off the field, the competitor he is, the talent he is. And, I've never heard anything bad about him. I think the guy's always smiling. He's always having fun playing football. It's nothing personal, but me overall, I prefer a Joe Flacco type of quarterback because I prefer a pocket passer. I don't believe in like running quarterbacks. In terms of trying to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. I think the Ravens the last couple of years, besides this one, they've been the perfect example. They've been like the regular season champs, but they never seem to get it done in the playoffs. So I feel like Harbaugh, to me, like he's been held back the last couple of years. And I'm hoping, obviously now it's up to him. So I'm sure he's going to go into a team that, they're going to be completely aligned with him. And he's going to have a system that he truly believes in. And we might go back to that Flacco era, right, of Baltimore, wherever he goes next. So yeah, those are a couple like initial thoughts I had on it. But yeah, then you mentioned like already there's 9 teams allegedly who, have reached out to his people. And, there's, I believe, 7 vacancies. So there's multiple teams, right? They still have head coaches that regardless of that have reached out to Harbaugh, his agent. Yeah, now I'll let you get back on here with the Harbaugh stuff. But yeah, so like I said, there's like 7 vacancies and then there's multiple teams. We're hoping. There's been some reports that the Dolphins may be one of the teams who, for some reason, still have a coach and are interested in Harbaugh. We don't know the other mystery teams. Could it be Tampa? Could it be Philadelphia? Could it be Buffalo? Like maybe one of the teams that are still in the playoffs,
Right.
determining on how they do in the playoffs. But yeah, man. So if you want to get into some of the options right now for Harbaugh, we have Tennessee, the Giants. Those are the vacancies open. Atlanta, just to name a few. But like I said, there's also Miami and other teams who have coaches. So yeah, what are your thoughts on like some of the opportunities Harbaugh has right now?
Yeah, I like some of these opportunities that he has. I know Tampa Bay is another one. Oh, I think you already mentioned Tampa.
Yeah, but go ahead. I think that'll be a hell of an option, man.
That's one of the options I've been hearing. And I think that's if they go ahead and fire Todd Bowles, I think that's where I would want to go if I was Harbaugh. But it's like again, it's one of those situations like where you already have a head coach, so it's going to be a really difficult for them to get Harbaugh anyways. But if you compare him up with Baker Mayfield, and then that entire wide receiving core that Tampa Bay already has, that's really strong. Even with Godwin and Mike Evans late into their careers. Then you have Ibuka rising as a young player. I think Harbaugh can be able to do something with that core more so than he could with some of the other cores. There's also the talks about the New York Giants. They have a really young roster, but personally, I think Tampa's more experienced roster, I think, has a lot higher potential. I know it sounds weird because they're a lot older, but I think that has more chances of getting you to a Super Bowl. Because I'm not too sure how, because I think a lot of the players, a lot of the best players from the Giants are still really raw prospects. I mean, not prospects, but they're still really raw as so I think the already seasoned talent that Tampa has to offer would probably be better. I know Atlanta has an head coaching opening. I
Yeah.
think that would be also really good. They're also similar to like the Giants where they have a lot of unseasoned talent, but they are a little bit older than you might think. Penix is in his second year.
Yeah, going
Um
to start. Yeah, like
but he's
obviously
one of the
full.
young, but he's like 25,
Yeah,
26.
he's like an older young quarterback. Yeah,
Yeah, and then you have Kyle
yeah,
Pitts. I think he's in his fifth season, or he's gonna be in his sixth season next year.
that's mind blowing. Yeah,
Yeah, and then you have Bijan. He's going into his fourth season. Drake London, fourth or fifth season.
yeah, something
You
around
know,
that range. Yeah,
a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent in that Falcons team. I don't think they're as raw as I'm making it seem. But they could use a John Harbaugh on their roster to help kind of like finally like get that talent out of them. Because there is talent on that Falcons team, and I do think a coach like that can help out. Or we could see him go to like a team like the Raiders. They draft Fernando Mendoza first overall, and they can see kind of like, and then he can kind of have like his own project. He doesn't have to like start with someone else's quarterback. He can have his own quarterback, and then he can kind of like mold him and then into the kind of QB he wants. And then obviously there's Brock Bowers on that team, so your whatever quarterback you get, he's gonna have a number one target to throw to. But for the most part, he's gonna be able to build that team basically in his vision. So I think that would also be really good. And then obviously the Miami Dolphins
let's go.
are the other team that I've heard
Oh,
of, or that
oh,
that could get him. It'll probably be kind of hard because like as Dolphins fans, we have a little bias. Like we think that okay, we have, or like as any NFL fan, we think like okay, these guys are good, but they might not be as good as we think they are. So there is talent, but it is like a little bit like it is a little bit messy because like some of our talent because most of our talented players are making a lot of money, and a lot of our young talent is really raw. Like they haven't been cooked yet. They probably needed another year in college. That's how raw I would consider them. But there is talent in that team. I do like guys like Chop Robinson and Kenneth Grant, Zeke Biggers,
you
Jordan Phillips. Those are pretty
Jordan
good
Phillips, man,
players.
that's my
We
guy.
have Jordan Brooks. I like I like those guys. I like that kind of core of young player on our defense, but
Yeah,
most of them are gonna need some time before they get better. And then on offense, we have Washington, we have Jalen Wright, there's Achan, there's Waddle.
yeah.
There's some good talent there, but there are a lot of guys who are making a lot of money, and there is one contract that is up for an extension this off season. So it's like okay, or with Devon Achan, I think his contract is due for an extension this season. So what do you really do there? Do you want to extend him? Do you want to trade him? There's options there, but it is a little bit of a mess because we still have Tua's money, we have Tyreek's money, we have Bradley Chubb's money, we have Waddle's money.
Austin Jackson, and it's not too crazy, but still, he's still under contract.
Is Teron Armstead? No, I think Teron Armstead is off contract.
Yeah, I hope so, man. If you retire, I hope so. I don't even
Yeah,
remember. I really hope so.
I know we had to pay him this year, but I don't know.
Oh my, that's insane. But yeah,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Jalen Ramsey's money is what came off the contract. Okay, yeah. So we have a lot of guys under contract. What do you want to do with the quarterback situation? Do you want to keep Tua? Do you want to trade him? Half of the fan base wants him gone. The other one wants to keep him. What do you want to do? What do you want to do with the
we're all
coach?
like searching for answers. I think that's
Yeah,
so.
it's a bit of a mess, but there is I feel like there is light at the end of the tunnel with the Dolphins roster wise, but it's a mess. And if I was John Harbaugh, would I want to go to this mess? I don't know. It's up for debate. And then we still have Mike McDaniel as our coach. So, what are we really going to be doing? Are we going to be like, well, what are we going to tell him if Harbaugh rejects him? So, like, do you tell him, oh, hey, yeah, we went after John Harbaugh to replace you, but no, we still want you. So, like, how do you deal with that mess? Like, we already went through this mess with Tony Sparano when we tried to go for Jim Harbaugh, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
From one brother to another. Wait, let me come in really quick, and then we'll get right back into the Dolphins. But
yeah,
I
no
want to
problem.
piggyback. So let's start. Okay, so you ended with the Dolphins there, and I think you described it perfectly. Like, of all the options, like, we're the one, like, I think by far with the the most with the biggest mess, right? I think the Raiders would have been there too if they didn't have the number 1 pick and the opportunity to pick Mendoza. But yeah, I do agree with everything you said with the Dolphins. It is, trust me, I think for any coach, it's like difficult, especially a coach of his caliber. Like, comparing each situation, there's probably one that's not the most intriguing in terms of like the personnel, in terms of just the whole organization. Because we haven't won anything literally since the seven. Like, okay, we've gotten the Super Bowls, but we haven't won a Super Bowl since the 70s, haven't won a playoff game since 2000. So I feel like one of the maybe only reasons Harbaugh want to come here is maybe he feels he could be that guy that could turn the organization around to what it was 50 plus years ago. And so maybe that's one of the reasons. Maybe he likes a challenge. I don't know. I know he's a super competitive guy. But then to talk about the other teams you mentioned, like the Raiders, yeah, they do have a number 1 target already built in-house there for Mendoza. They have Brock Bowers. He had an elite rookie year this year. Unfortunately, he was just hurt. He started the season off with a knee injury. He tried to play through it, but you could just tell he didn't have that same speed, the same power in his legs. He wasn't the same guy. But you got to give the guy credit for at least trying and going out there for a couple of games. But yeah, you do already have Brock Bowers. You just drafted Ashton Genty, so you have 2 elite options right there on offense. Offensive line obviously is still a work in progress, but I do like a couple of the guys they got. They got a guy late rounds named Charles Grant. He didn't start like the whole season. He's kind of like a project, but he came out of, I believe it was like North Dakota State. But I was super high on him going into the draft. So they have a couple young pieces there. So yeah, the Raiders I feel like they're maybe a notch above the Dolphins because of that first pick and because of Bowers and Genty, really. Because even there, I mean, that's another organization. They haven't won anything in, like, I mean, I don't
The
even know.
80s.
That's something. Yeah, the 80s. So they haven't won since the 80s. I mean, Tom Brady became a minority owner last year. I know people
Right.
like hype that up, but like, I mean, he hired Pete Carroll. After 1 year, he fired him, even though I don't know what he expected Pete Carroll to do with what was given to him, but whatever. That's not the focus here. And then Atlanta, I agree with you. I love something that you said, is that the talent they have is still raw. It hasn't been completely coached out of them. That's what I think it is. And those guys haven't been able to play like in playoff games and big time games that really matter. So I think that's what really they're lacking too, is like good coaching and then like the experience in those big time games. Like you mentioned already with Penix, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Those are all guys that I think any coach would be intrigued to coach and have be like the some of the foundational pieces of a rebuild or of a build, whatever you want to call it. So I really like Atlanta, man, as an option, and I feel like in that weak division too. I mean, literally Harbaugh could take them next year and they could dominate that division. I know it's not saying much, but still, I really think if they're able to land Harbaugh, they'll run that division, and then their division rivals that you mentioned too, Tampa. I'm with you. I think that'll be Harbaugh's best destination to go to. I think they're the most win now opportunity out there right now for Harbaugh. If I think Atlanta could be dominant with Harbaugh, imagine Tampa, even in the first year with Harbaugh. I mean, I think they'll be, one of the like a top 3 seed in the NFC for sure. After his first year there. And you already mentioned all the guys like with the receivers with Buka, Godwin, and Evans, and that was something this year. I don't know if people know, but those guys weren't always like fully healthy. Like Buka really was the one that played the most, but Evans and Godwin, they were like in and out of the lineup. Godwin suffered a major injury last year, and I don't think he was ever fully healthy, like 100% this year. And that's why we saw him in and out of the lineup. And then I feel like the biggest issue there was the defense. And it's really personnel wise. I don't think it was anything with the coaching. I think Todd Bowles was a great like defensive coach, but I feel like the front office there, they need to do something about the defense and bring in a little more talent. But I'm definitely with you, man. I think Harbaugh going to Tampa, I mean, will be freaking scary for the rest of the league. And when you think about it, they're only a couple years away. I mean, a couple years off of winning a Super Bowl. Then these last couple years with Mayfield and the team they have now, they've made, a couple playoff runs here and there. So it's not like they don't have the experience either. So imagine you bring in that elite coach and, he could do what Bruce Arians did for them a couple years ago and deliver, a third Lombardi trophy to Tampa. But yeah, man, I wanted to make sure, piggyback on all those teams you mentioned. I feel like those were four teams that were good to talk about. But now let's get back into the Dolphins. So as you were saying, we're going after Harbaugh. We still have McDaniel as a coach. You said already, we did the same thing to Tony Sparano. We tried to get Harbaugh's brother to leave Stanford at the time, which is crazy to think about, right? Stanford, and he went to San Fran, Michigan, and now the Chargers. But it's crazy. He's literally gone team to team, and then his brother has stayed in Baltimore. It's like completely opposites. But yeah, we're doing what we always do. We're running it like a circus because, yeah, how in the world, like, do you have a guy in that position and then you not only do you do it once, but now you do it twice, Steven Ross, you have a guy with you, telling him, oh yeah, we still believe in you, we're going to keep you. And then at the same time, you're on the side trying to get another person to come take his job. So yeah, from that standpoint of it all, or aspect of it all, it's just like, I just don't understand, man. But we could do the same things over and over again and expect them to change all of a sudden. We got to completely change our ways. If you're interested in Harbaugh, if you're interested in any other candidate, just fire your coach and interview all these head coaching candidates. You already fired your GM in the season, so now you're going to do that half and half thing again. So yeah, man, those were a couple of things I wanted to say of the Dolphins, man. But yeah, what else do you have on the Dolphins there?
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of want to piggyback off of what you said, like that half and half thing, because like we're probably gonna fire him next year anyways. So it's like,
Exactly.
what's the point of what's the point of waiting it? Why not like why not fire him now and then just like and go and like just go get on with it? Or if you were really serious about letting the GM decide, let him decide, but don't let Mike McDaniel be part of the process. Because if Mike McDaniel is part of the process, he's not gonna put his hat in for the guy that wants to fire him. It's just not gonna happen. So I mean, it's basically just everyone saving their own ass at this point. It's ridiculous. It's like I don't know if what Ross is expecting or what Ross is expecting McDaniel to do by allowing him to be a part of the process. Like, yeah, of course he's gonna pick the guy that wants to keep him there. Like, it's common sense. Like, I don't know what other business runs in the way where like, oh yeah, you get to choose your own boss. I mean, unless you're like a self-employed, what was it? Unless you're like self-employed or anything like that. Like, no, like you don't get to choose your own boss in any other business. But I guess.
So yeah, literally that's the thing, because there's so much to talk about with them, but like we're all speechless at the end of the day, because what else can we say? So it's definitely tricky. But yeah, now if you want to get into another major coaching candidate that we love, Kevin Stefanski, he got fired from Cleveland. I mean, what a shock, right? Cleveland fired a good coach, but actually, yeah, the Browns and Dolphins are similar in a way. So we feel for the Browns fans as well, obviously. But yeah, for some reason they fired Kevin Stefanski. They hadn't won anything ever, basically. He led them to the playoffs. They went toe-to-toe with Andy Reid and Mahomes, multiple 11-win seasons, and he was part of a organization that's completely dysfunctional. I mean, it's crazy. It started from like he built that Mayfield team, did amazing. They won a playoff game. They had a couple 11-win seasons, and all of a sudden, Mayfield's a scapegoat. And the owner wants to trade for Deshaun Watson, who has multiple allegations against him, guarantee him the most money in NFL history. Then this past draft, you draft a quarterback, and then, a couple rounds later, let's go draft another one. But somehow the owner keeps the GM. But no, Stefanski, it's all his fault. He sucks. Sorry. So yeah, Stefanski, to me, I would put him as a number 2 candidate out there behind Harbaugh. And I think wherever he goes, I'm going to be excited for him. I think, he has the opportunity now as a free agent coach, basically, to pick his next destination, man. And it's looking like, a couple of the teams we covered, Atlanta, the Raiders, Tennessee, the Giants, they could all be like players for Stefanski. But yeah, man, if you want to give some like general thoughts on the firing of Stefanski, and then any teams you would like to see him like go to.
Yeah, I wasn't like super surprised that that they that that they fired him. I was kind of like I was expecting it. I was like, oh, okay, they had two bad seasons. I was like, all right, yeah, that's typically what happens. Like, you have one or two bad seasons in the NFL. But I don't think that has anything to do with Stefanski himself. I think he's a great coach. And I think what he did for Cleveland was really good, was really impressive too. Like after the whole like Baker Mayfield thing happened, where you trade him away and then you trade for Deshaun Watson. I thought he handled it really well by continuing to build the defense and the run game for the Browns. And they still managed to, and with Joe Flacco as their quarterback, when they brought him in, they managed to make the playoffs. So I was like,
That's another example.
That's really impressive. I was convinced he was washed. I mean, he probably was, but hey, they still made the playoffs with him. So huge, like big thumbs up to Stefanski from there. And then I don't know. I mean, if I was a Browns fan, I would be upset about it because I do think he's a good coach. But hey, I guess that's just how it is. I think Atlanta's probably like I think that's my favorite destination for Stefanski because he is still like a young coach. Like he's still only 43.
Yeah.
So I do think he would be able to work with that young core of Atlanta. That isn't that I said it wasn't that young, but it still has a lot of potential. So I think he can get the best out of that young team and kind of like I think he could be the guy that kind of gets them over the hump. Because like even these last 2 years with Raheem Morris, I didn't think they were that bad. I thought they were pretty good. I thought it was a little premature for them to fire him. I thought they were making a lot of improvements. They easily one more win and they could have easily been in the playoffs. Like, they did have two losses, two bad losses to the Jets and the Dolphins. You win one of those, you're in the playoffs. I know it's a bad division, but like still, like it's a huge improvement from the team that he inherited. So I would say that Stefanski could make that team a lot better, and I do think they could be good in the future. And then they brought in two edge rushers last year. I'm not gonna lie, I forgot their names, but
Yeah,
and
they
they did
improved that.
improve that pass rush, like Rob said earlier today. So I do like what they could become. And who knows, he can have that similar turnaround that he did with Cleveland, as long as they keep him.
No, yeah. I think Atlanta, like you said, definitely a great option for him, man. If he'll put them up a notch, just like we were saying with Harbaugh. That Harbaugh would completely change Atlanta or whatever team he goes to. I think Stefanski too could have that effect, and especially in that division. But yeah, Stefanski, like a team I haven't talked about. You mentioned the Giants before, so I want to go to them really quick. I forgot to give my thoughts on them. So yeah, the Giants are just like I'm just like I don't understand how Harbaugh like that's like supposed to be the favorite for him. Like don't get me wrong, they have Jackson Dart, Scatterboo, and Neighbors, right? Three young offensive guys that look good. And defensively, you're talking about Atlanta's pass rush. The Giants also, Thibodeau, Carter, Ryan Burns is amazing, but I don't get the intrigue there. I mean, ever since like they or Coughlin retired, but they really forced him out. Like the Giants went from like an elite franchise to like an absolute joke. But don't get me, I know I'm saying that as a Dolphin fan, so I know I might sound nuts, but I don't really see the intrigue in the Giants as much as other people do. I think Jackson Dart actually, it's like just to go back to Harbaugh really quick, but I feel like it could be a similar like situation to Lamar Jackson because like Jackson Dart, he could pass the ball good, but someone has to tell him that he has to stop running so much. His rookie year this year, you got what, like 2 or 3 concussions, and then you ask him about him, and he says, "No, I'm gonna keep on running." But I feel like it'll be kind of similar to Lamar Jackson in a way. Although I would say Lamar Jackson was a little smarter in terms of like how and when he would run, but still, I don't know. But whatever. Get back to Stefanski. I know that's another team that's been thrown out there for Stefanski. I don't know. I don't really see the intrigue as much there for Stefanski. I feel it's kind of like similar to what he like started with in Cleveland in a way. Like I don't know. I feel like Atlanta's better like suited for like a run for now rather than the Giants. It'll take like 4 or 5 years in my opinion. And then you have a team like Tennessee, who we haven't mentioned. I feel like, of all the young teams that are looking for a head coach, they probably have the least talent overall, I would say. But with Cam Ward, I think he's going to be a tremendous quarterback in the NFL. I thought he had a nice rookie year. They fired his head coach. He hardly had receivers, a bad O-line. I mean, he didn't really have a lot of things that are supporting him there. And that is a franchise that fired Mike Vrabel a couple years ago. So we got to put that out there. But I do believe in Cam Ward, so I'm hoping. I would absolutely love to see Stefanski actually land there in Nashville and coach the Titans, because I think he could be the coach to really help Cam Ward, just like Stefanski helped out Baker Mayfield in the beginning of his career. I think he could be that same guy for Cam Ward. So I like me, because I don't think the Dolphins are gonna get Stefanski. So for me personally, I want him to land in Tennessee. I know that's maybe a hot take or not a popular opinion, but it's really like the Canes fan in me. I really want to see like Cam Ward thrive and given the right tools around him to help him succeed. But yeah, bro, those are a couple thoughts I had there on Stefanski, some of the teams. I don't know if there's anything you want to respond to there, like the Titans or anything else.
Nah, I think that would be a pretty interesting situation for him to go to Tennessee. They would take a little bit longer to be competitive than most of the other teams that we mentioned, but I think that would be a good I think that would be a pretty good destination. He gets to start over with with a young quarterback, a number 1 overall pick. Yeah, I think that would be a pretty good situation for Stefanski. And then I mean, he already has his quarterback. All he has to, so now he can build the rest of his team.
So yeah, I don't know. I have one more thing I want to mention. That's kind of relates to the Dolphins. Anthony Weaver, for those of you who listen to that podcast, I've been extra high on him than most people, I would say, from last year and this year. I just feel like both seasons as a defensive coordinator here, when you look at our defense from start to finish in both seasons, they look like completely different units. Last year, like, he was given no pass rush, and we ended as a top 10 defense. This year, he's given one of the worst secondaries I've ever seen. And by the end of the season, if you looked at our secondary, you looked at Rasul Douglas, Jack Jones, Ashton Davis, the guy who, I think Melon Fangu, the guy we got from Detroit, all those guys progressed greatly. So I just feel like Weaver, you just got to give him time, and then he's able to he's able to do what he can with what you give him. If that makes sense. So I just wanted to mention Weaver, he's gotten 3 head coaching requests so far for interviews by Arizona, by Atlanta, and by the Baltimore Ravens. So I wanted to make sure to get that out there. Because I have said, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast directly, but throughout the season, I've told at least my dad multiple times that I'm worried that this is going to be another assistant that we had in our hands that we're going to let go. So I'm a big Weaver guy overall, basically, to put it all together. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Weaver, or if there's any other candidates out there, any other coaching things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm a little. I'm not gonna lie. My opinion about Weaver is a little different. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I was a little surprised that he did get head coaching offers, but but to be fair, this defense wasn't very talented. We haven't invested in our defense in a really long time, and that's in the last 2 first-round picks we have spent them on defense, but they were really raw prospects. Like, maybe a guy like I said earlier, like guys that probably needed an extra year in college, because I think Kenneth Grant only started, I think, what was it, like 1 or 2 seasons at Michigan?
Yeah, I think 1 or 2. Yeah, I know he was a junior when he came up.
I think Chop Robinson also started like 1 season at Penn State as their
they didn't have a lot of experience for sure.
Yeah, and he was also, there's not a lot of experience. They didn't play a lot in college, so and to be fair, like, he did a pretty decent job, like, considering what he had. I'm not like as high on Weaver as Robert is, but I do think he is a pretty good defensive minded. I do think he is a decent defensive coordinator, and if you do give him the right pieces, he could probably build a pretty good defense. I don't know. I'm not like crazy about him, but I do think he needs a fair shot to actually, like, being able to control a good defense, or like a respectable defense. Because
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, most of these guys were probably just gonna forget next year.
Literally. No, I'm glad you understood my take there, because I feel like he's done as much as he can, if that makes sense. Like, there's only so much you can do with what you're given. I feel like he's really been given nothing when you really look at it. The 2 years he's been in Miami. So I'm intrigued now to see, we'll see if he lands a head coaching job. I already know, like, last offseason, like some people forgot, but he got a couple interviews. Like Jacksonville and New Orleans interviewed him to be head coach, and then now he has 3 new teams interviewing him. So we'll see ultimately if this is the offseason he lands as a head coach. But I know for sure if he doesn't get a head coaching job, like if I were him, and okay, I don't get a head coaching job, I want to still be a defensive coordinator, but for a different team. At the end of the day, I don't think he's been given any tools in order to like help him succeed. You feel me? Like he hasn't
Yeah, I
been.
feel you. And honestly, I do think eventually he could be a head coach. I'm not just saying this just to say it, but I actually do think eventually he could be. But I don't think right now would be the time. And yeah, to be fair, like one more thing I also wanted to mention was that like I think three of our starting or no, like two of our starting defensive linemen were also like I think Zeke Biggers and Jordan Phillips. I think they were both like third or fourth round picks.
Yeah, they're
So it's
late.
like it's not really you're not really giving him much to work with. So it's like that's not really fair. And then you brought in Jack Jones from a different team. I think he was from someone's practice squad.
So Douglas, like we signed him literally after the preseason, so we really didn't have any time with him in the off season. And look how he ended the year. Douglas actually like played really good for us, like
Yeah.
compared to how he started.
Yeah, no, that's true. And then we had, I mean, and he had he had Jordan Brooks playing really good.
And
He
Tyrell
had a few
Dodson,
Pro
you know,
Bowl like nods too. So
yeah, those 2 linebackers, like the veteran guys, I thought they did good with Weaver, man. Dodson and
yeah.
Brooks, they exceeded my expectations by far. But
Not
I didn't think
definitely.
that they're like horrible, but I didn't think like Brooks ended up leading the NFL in tackles, So
Yeah. I
it's
mean
crazy.
that is crazy because like considering like the fact that at Seattle he was a pretty good linebacker, but he wasn't like leading the NFL in tackles. I do think he'll eventually get a head coaching job. I just don't think right now is the time. I think he needs like maybe another year or two and a better organization that'll like actually like invest in talented defensive players.
Nah, I feel you for sure. I can see a scenario, especially with like Harbaugh, Stefanski, like really good veteran options out there. Like he might not make it through this cycle, but I think definitely like the latest will be next offseason that we'll see him be a head coach somewhere. And if he does get hired though, this offseason I could see like a Arizona, Tennessee, like really a team that's really like gonna build from the ground up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. If they don't like the new head coach that they hire, maybe they could bring in Weaver, whether either now or next year.
Yeah, man. But yeah, nah, I wanted to make sure to talk about Weaver. But yeah, is there any other thing in the coaching world that you want to cover or not?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything.
Not perfect, man. But yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed, the second half of this NFL episode. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing our thoughts here. If you want to give us your thoughts on any of this coaching craziness in NFL and you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to drop your comments down here below. You could also reach out to us on Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. Follow us on there as well. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks again, Jerry, bro, for taking the time to join us today.
No, thank you for having me on.
Not for sure, man. But yeah, guys, that'll do it for our NFL coaching segment. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the first 2026 episode of the Flame Entertainment and Sports. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing my playoff predictions for the upcoming NFL playoffs starting this weekend. Can't wait to watch all of those games. And I also hope you enjoyed our conversation with our guy Jerry as we discussed the many storylines in the coaching world in the NFL right now, including John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, and as always, we had to cover some Dolphins on here. So yeah, guys, once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks again for tuning in. Please make sure to keep up with us and follow us if you can on Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Until next time, everyone, fins up. Thanks to Jerry again, and take care.